A very good evening to all of us here. A heartfelt welcome to all of you. I'm Neelam Seolekar, Ehsaas Woman of Pune, and it's always a pleasure to gather with such a wonderful group of people for the Right Circle, an event that has become a cherished tradition for all of us here. Hosted by the Prabha Khaitan Foundation, this evening promises to be another memorable chapter in our shared love for literature and conversation. We are especially thrilled to have with us tonight as we welcome the brilliant author and journalist Siddharthya Roy. Joining him in conversation is the esteemed Lieutenant General Shokin Chauhan. Together, they will guide us through a captivating discussion. This is, I'm sure, going to leave you all very inspired. Today's event is in association with our venue and hospitality partner, the O Hotel Pune, and the support of Ehsaas Women of Pune. The media partner for the event is Lokmat. This event is held under the gracious patronage of Shree Cement Limited. Before a riveting conversation unfolds between the two today, allow me to introduce in gist about Prabha Khaitan Foundation. Prabha Khaitan Foundation is a Kolkata-based NGO dedicated to social, cultural, welfare and humanitarian causes. Based in Kolkata, the foundation is dedicated to promoting performing arts, culture, education, literary, gender equality, and women empowerment. It collaborates with caregivers, committed individuals, and like-minded institutions to implement cultural, educational, literary, and social welfare projects in India. We are currently present in 50+ cities in India and overseas. To create awareness in the community, we uphold one pressing social issue every month. We are elated to share that 3 times Grammy Award winner Ricky Cage, the man behind the anthem and signature caller tune of the Prabha Khaitan Foundation, has curated 12 amazing musical pieces to score across video invites of events and social media platforms, as well as for pan-India and overseas communications. The music of the month for September is The Magic of Today is the Science of Tomorrow, a musical piece that reminds us never to lose our childlike fascination, to learn, and to never stop believing in miracles. Allow me now to introduce our guest author for today, Siddharthya Roy. Siddharthya Roy is an independent journalist focusing on political strife and insurgencies in South Asia. With an engineering background and years spent coding, he moved to professional journalism in 2011 after earning an MA in Politics and Global Affairs from Columbia University. In 2018, he backed the Pulitzer Center in Crisis Reporting grant for his reporting of neo-jihadist groups in South Asia, investigating human trafficking and narco trading in the Rohingya camps. He introduced India's first data and computational journalism program at the Symbiosis Institute of Media and Communication. He splits his time between being a digital nomad and daydreaming of becoming an analog one. A warm welcome to Lieutenant General Shokin Chauhan. He will tread today's reel of conversation with Siddharthya Roy. Words surely do not suffice his achievements and contributions to our nation. Nevertheless, I deem it my pleasure to introduce him. Lieutenant General Shokin Chauhan is the former Director General, Assam Rifles. General is an alumnus of NDA, Defense Services Staff College, the Army War College, and the prestigious National Defense College. He has served in both the Ministry of Defense and the Ministry of Home Affairs. He is the former Defense Attaché in the Indian Embassy in Nepal. Super. Now, without further ado, I give to Lieutenant General Shokin Chauhan to kickstart the event today. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm hosting a show like this. But let me start with giving you a little story about Siddharth. I met Siddharth a couple of years ago in his house. He called me for lunch. And in that conversation, what struck me was his ability to play with words, his ability to talk about issues that have been in my life, a career of over 40 years, issues that are very close to me. I have spent a lifetime with violent men. And there is a saying, which let me just quote from here, which epitomizes Siddharth's book. You cannot call yourself peaceful unless you're capable of great violence. If you're not capable of that violence, you're not peaceful, you're useless. So when we talk of violent men, we talk of people who are either people who change the world, or trying to change the world, or trying to change our world the way we look at them. And because I spent so much time chasing them, using sometimes extreme violence, I am aware that sometimes to get them over to your side is to threaten to use violence or even use it. So when his book came to me, he requested me to talk about it. And when I read it, that was the first issue that sort of struck me. That why would a journalist talk about violent men, and how does this sort of, how do these short stories really epitomize this company that he keeps? Not very good company. So tell me, Siddharth, what do you believe drives individuals to commit acts of extreme violence? Are these acts the result of individual choices? Or are they inevitable products of a broader social, economic and political forces? Are these violent men anomalies in our system?
Allow me to answer this question with, in different parts. Is violence essentially a part of us as both individuals and as society? That's the first thing that I would like to address. And then move on to what the factors are and how they play a role in bringing that out. Is violence a part of who we are individually? 100% yes. It would take an extreme amount of hypocrisy on our part to deny that violence is as much a part of us as the capability to love, as the capability to share a meal, to be kind to those around us. All these things coexist. How do I say it? There is this famous Baul song which says the heart and the mind is like a house with many rooms. And even if it was one room, there are many occupants in it. And they all do their little things by themselves, whether I like it or not. Sometimes, and of course, this has been said beautifully, so he doesn't talk about violence like I do. He says, there is a painter in that house, and there is a singer in that house, and there is a poet in that house, and there is a sage in that house. Sometimes the singer sings louder than, and at other times the painting's colors are brighter. Sometimes the silence of the sage is stronger, more audible than the others, but they all live in my house. Amar ghore boshot kore koyjona. I don't even know how many people live in my house, in the house that I call my heart. So to answer your question, violence very much, of course, exists in us as individuals. However, it is not that we act upon all the urges that exist in us, do we? Let's take the logic of the house a little bit, illustrative logic a little bit ahead. We have a bathroom in our house, we have a kitchen in our house, we have a bedroom in our house, we have a living room in our house, and so on and so forth. Without any of these rooms, our house would be incomplete. It wouldn't become a real house. But that doesn't mean you go sit in the bathroom all day long, or it's not like you're sitting in the kitchen and eating all day long, are we? What has happened with certain individuals is that they have lost this focus of being balanced and visiting the many houses that they inhabit. Why would I even say lost focus? Maybe some of them are more attuned to go to a certain room, some of them are attuned to take to violence. More than what we would look at the majority of society. However, I would just like to read a line from what I have said about these violent men and women. I have said that these violent men and women I speak of, some of them fight for faith, others fight for power. Many fight just to belong. You see, we do know about the phenomenon of human beings fighting for faith, fighting for power for a very long time, right? Our entire human history, what we call nations, what we call society, religion, etc., etc. It's been cleaved through these attempts to fight for what you believe in, or attempts to control something, power. But the change, General, I want to point out in today's times is that the illusion that this hyper-communicative world has created, that you have a gazillion friends on Facebook and you have a gazillion followers on Instagram, and yet there is such extreme loneliness that I see all around me. There is this floating nature that where do we belong? A question of identity, a question of belonging, a question of home. For example, someone was just asking me when we were having tea outside, so you're from Pune? I said, so is Pune home to you? I said, my passport says so. But I don't know anymore. I haven't lived in this town for a while. I don't know what is home. I think those individuals who have lost the idea of where they belong in society as individuals and in a form of accepting themselves, they are a new breed of violent men which we haven't seen before. I think that's how I would classify these violent men.
Thanks, Siddharth. I think that's very emotive, actually. And one can understand why you wrote this book. Because I remember a couple of years back when I asked you, you said, sir, I'm writing my book. And we spoke so much about Bangladesh. Because these are all places of great violence. I've been to Bangladesh, I've been to Burma, I've been to Kashmir. Every one of the places that Siddharth talks about in his book are battlegrounds for me. And I can sort of understand, literally feel the way when he travels from one point to the other as to what he must be feeling about dealing with them. Because as they are capable of great violence, they're also capable of great deceit. They're also capable of killing you without compulsion. And they're also capable of extreme love and extreme, sense of duty. And it's a very different mix of dealing with these violent men. I remember in Nagaland, one of the issues that I had after retirement was that the government got me to Nagaland to get the Naga insurgent groups into a ceasefire. Now these were groups that have been fighting us for 60 years. But as they were capable of violence, they were also capable of talking peace and also capable of great wisdom. But one of the, when you start your book, Siddharth, you start with Bangladesh. And the first thing that struck me was, a month ago, we've had a problem in Bangladesh. The Jamaat, the Bangladesh National Party, the Bangladesh Army has taken over Bangladesh. The use of violence by them against the minorities, against the minority Hindu community, and you come from East Bangladesh. Tell me, it's almost prophetic. Could you feel in 2016 when you went there, 2017, 18, that you would meet such people, and this was Bangladesh actually falling at that moment? Could you make it out?
I actually could, and in very clear words. So please be aware that I'm a journalist. It's not in my nature to say that which I don't want to say, and it's not in my nature to even stop myself from saying that what I want to say. So I will be speaking very openly and freely. In 2017, it was 2017, if memory serves me right, the student protests that you are seeing now that started, it was the exact same student protest on the issue of quotas in government jobs, etc., which had erupted. I hadn't gone to report that. I had gone to report as I was introduced. I had gone to report on other things. I had gone for the Rohingya crisis and other things I was reporting on. But there was this one evening when I was in Dhaka. I was near Dhaka University, and I was standing there having a conversation with the students of Dhaka University. Just a random conversation. It's not an interview. We are having chai and we are having cigarettes, and we are having a conversation. All of a sudden, I see this entire truck full of heavily armed riot police come down, and they start beating random students up who are just sitting there. There is no protest happening at that point. Have there been protests? Yes. But at that moment it wasn't happening, nothing was happening. People were young kids were just sitting around. A certain officer in that group of riot police, he was carrying those tear gas firing weapons, Now tear gas firing, as the general will confirm, there are certain rules to engage. You generally fire it in a direction where it doesn't hit anybody. In front of my very eyes, sitting at a distance that the general and I are sitting, a young man was shot in the head right in front of me. With zero provocation. I saw his skull split, I saw the blood and brain start dripping out right there and then. Of course I reported it. What is the job of a journalist if he doesn't report it? I wrote about it. Though that wasn't my intention, but I wrote about it. Do you know what the reaction of the Sheikh Hasina government was? It was to put me on a blacklist and deny me visa, journalist visas after. The very son of Ms. Sheikh Hasina, he runs an IT cell in his country. And all of a sudden I woke up to seeing this ridiculous campaign tagging me, saying I'm an ISIS sympathizer. At a later point, I actually met one of the senior officers there and I said that, are you out of your mind? I'm a Hindu Bengali. How on earth am I going to be ISIS? Like, you want to call me something else? At least use your brains a little bit in slurring me. The reason I'm mentioning this is because I want to answer the general's question. When I saw these excesses being committed by the Sheikh Hasina government, where you are intolerant of the smallest of things, of the smallest of differences of opinion, of the smallest of democratic dissent, then the dissent takes on a form that we saw now. To add to that, General, I will mention this. Since 2017 actually, sir, some of the most veteran Bangladesh analysts in this country, people who report to our agencies, advise our agencies, they have been warning of these excesses and the possibility of a bursting forth of dissent in this format since 2017. And I can say this on record, absolutely. I have sat in their company, heard them out. Delhi looked the other way around. The political leadership was stunted in its views of what democracy should look like. So this was very much inevitable. It was inevitable that if not by this name, by another name it would have burst. Now, having said that, do I look at this as a problematic thing that has happened in Bangladesh? 100%. 100%. their current leader, the so-called interim leader, Yunus, he hasn't been elected. He has been appointed. That does not augur well for what we call democracy, does it? We don't even know, for that matter, that how long this interim government is going to last. I have not heard anything about them organizing elections again. The streets have been given up to little groups of militias who are manning the streets. Some of them are breaking the temples of the Hindus there. Some claim to be even protecting the temples, and I have seen several such. But nevertheless, the mob is out on the streets. Is it dangerous? 100% so. Especially in Bangladesh, which has a history of several coups. But I cannot say either this or that, and I will constantly say that as dangerous as this situation is, as much as it may slip side to a bad position, both for the people of Bangladesh and from a security concern perspective of India, I can never in any good faith say that we did not see this coming. There were leaders in this country called India, there were leaders sitting in New Delhi who refused to see this. And therefore we have this situation. Lastly, I would like to also caution against taking a very, political view, in the sense that if you already choose your side on any debate, any discussion, you will be very stunted in your understanding of what is happening. The Jamaat has a very troubling history in the subcontinent. It has a very troubling history, but there is also nuance in it. Do not forget that the Jamaat also raised the flag of independence from the British at one point of time. It's not that it's gone away either. So when we look at the Jamaat, we must look at it with nuance. Now the one big problem with us is that, we always take this my team versus yours. We are all for looking at nuance on our side, but not on the other side. Oh, the Jamaat, terrible. Bigots, etc. We don't have bigots in this country. Oh, absolutely do. I think we all know the name that I cannot take in this session if I am not to be arrested tomorrow. So we must appreciate, we must accept, acknowledge that as well. And lastly, I would say that let's not be too quick to pass judgments. The students who've come on the streets and have fought against Sheikh Hasina are also the same students who fought and sloganeered against the Islamists. Shahbag movement, do not forget. They are not one and the same as, you cannot call everybody Islamist or call everybody extremist just because you disagree with it. Our chosen leader has been pushed out does not mean everybody is evil over there. The students' unions were the ones who made Shahbag movement happen. Sheikh Hasina did come to power and end the previous regime on the backs of these student movements. They are still here to stay. So let's see what the future holds for us. I can just hope that this fiasco, and I think this is the part where the general will agree with me if the cameras are off, that let better sense prevail on our leaders in New Delhi.
The good thing about discussing with someone who's been there and who's talked to various actors there is that the sense that he gets is something that is now playing out on the streets of Bangladesh. But the great thing about your book, Siddharth, if I may say so, is the way you move from one battlefield to the other. So when you were in Bangladesh, you also talked about the Rohingyas. Now, Rohingyas has been a dirty word here for the last 7, 8 years. I was the Director General of Assam Rifles when the Home Ministry said the Rohingyas have invaded us and they're coming right inside and creating all these problems. But you met them. What are they really like? What are their thoughts? And how do you feel them moving towards what end in the future? Because they're still in relief camps. Is there a future for them in Burma? What are they going to do outside? Are they going to stay in the island forever? What do you feel?
The Rohingyas are essentially not really alien to that which we have been in our country and our subcontinent. We are all migrants. We've all sought refuge since time immemorial from one group or the other. So let me begin by being very clear about that. Take for example the surname Joshi. Do you realize how widespread it is? You know, every part of this country seems to have a Joshi. Why is that? They sought refuge, as ma'am correctly held on here. They sought refuge under certain circumstances of political exigence, and they had to move away from Joshimat, right? My forefathers were Hindu Bengalis from Borishal. Several of them sought refuge in different parts, did they not? Yet again, what we have done is we played this game of terrible hypocrisy and insensitivity when we speak of the Rohingyas. We've said, oh look, these Muslim refugees, we always very carefully leave out the part Muslim, the descriptor. And we perpetuated certain ideas about them. So, the first thing to say, and very simply so, when I met them, they spoke like me, they looked like me, they even ate like me. So I did not find them to be very different in that sense. However, what I did, what is also not deniable, is that they have a very complex history as a people. You see, the Rohingyas, they are sort of descendants of the Bengalis, but their language is a mix of Malay, Arabic and Bangla. They write in the Bangla font, but they are over there. And they settled in the Arakan region a long time ago, a very long time ago. And they had to fight to get big parts of that land. You know, even though they lived there, the Hmong of that place, they were denying them their home. They were desperate several times in history. This is not the first time. Several times in history, they have been persecuted for their faith, for their way of life, etc. What sets them apart is essentially this endless history of persecution, this, how do I say, the stigma that has been attached to them. History has been rather unkind to them and has labeled them to be these bandicoots, these looters and whatever else. But you know, history is very troublesome as well, because some of the classifications we do make, they do come with a grain of reality. What a lot of people often don't know when I interact with them is that maybe members of the audience here wouldn't know. Do you know that they actually reached out to Muhammad Ali Jinnah during the formation of Pakistan and said that, oh, you know what, we also want to be Pakistan. Declare Arakan as a part of Pakistan. This was on record. Sadly, we don't have that so much in history, books. They did have a very strong sense of making an Islamic country. That, of course, goes against both sides of their border. Myanmar on one side, with the Burmese being in control and their Buddhist ideas, etc., etc. And on their west, where you have Bangladesh, Bangladesh quite literally rejected the religious identity and chose their linguistic identity to become a nation. So they are in a bit of a fix. I will not speak much about those who have come and settled in India and whatever is spoken about them. The primary reason, as General you might concur, is that their numbers are really very few.
Yeah.
And in those little numbers, they don't really pose the kind of threat that 24/7 news channels of this country would like to make us believe. A lot of them are settled in Karachi, Pakistan, and ironically, Pakistan too has a similar discourse. Where the elite Muslims of Pakistan, they look down upon the Rohingya pretty much in the same way that the usual suspects in our country want to do. They say, oh, these Rohingyas, and I'm quoting you. I'm quoting a certain former ISI man. He used to be the range head, or he used to be a major, and he was in charge of the Karachi range. The ones who really look at the ports and everything. And I remember him talking to me about the Rohingyas Otherwise, that man was a very educated man, polished. And the moment it came to the Rohingyas, I said, oh, you know these Rohingyas. And I said, you have so much nuance about the Punjabi from here and there. You have so much nuance about the Kashmiri from here and there. The moment I mentioned the word Rohingya, I said, oh, you know these Rohingyas. And he said that, oh, you know, they run the narco business in Karachi ports, etc. So I actually asked him back. I said that they only take the shipments from the big boats and bring it onto the port, don't they? Do they actually own the businesses that you're talking about? Or are they still run by your Islamabad elites? He did not have an answer to that. So I think I want to make just one larger point about how we handle violent men, or those who we call anomalies. It's like going to school. Once a child is identified to be troublesome, you keep poking that child and pushing that child into a corner to be even more troublesome. Even though his intention was not to take that identity on, you have foisted it on him. Today in India, I have actually, now speaking of spending time in the company of Rohingyas, my book is dedicated to a Rohingya man, to Mohibullah. Mohibullah was the leader of, in the Kutupalong camp, he was trying to do a peaceful repatriation. He was literally shot dead by the other Rohingyas for being too peaceful. So I think I've made my point about them not being a monolith. But the point I was making is that, the more we push, the more we label people, the more we increase our diminutive talk about other people, one fine day they are going to turn around and say, you know what, fine, I am a terrorist. You have left me no option but to be this. That's what we've sadly done with the Rohingya. In my chapter where I speak about the hungry ladies of Cox's Bazar, it was a time when I met these. There was a brothel that was running there, and I was studying human trafficking, and I spent an evening in the company of these three rather young, very young women actually, and the manager, the lady who ran that establishment, the madame, as they say. You know what we really spoke about? That little girl, one of the youngest over there, all she liked was ice cream. I gave them chewing gum from my hands. I feel like it still hurts. It still hurts me. It still brings tears to my eyes to see this. How is it that our civilization, so many things we've achieved, you couldn't give a little girl just ice cream? You couldn't let them remain just simple little girls? And then you left them no option but to go into a flesh trade which they never went in with their own volition. I have sat and had a conversation with a lady who she sat in front of me still as stone and narrated how her little boy was thrown alive into a fire. I've sat with yet another lady who could not sit down with me, and she was a little apologetic, and I said, what happened, madam? And she said, that bullet, she was shot in the thigh when she was running away from the Burmese military. I met this little girl, I have a photo with her. She's sitting on, she's like, I'm carrying her like this. She was delivered when her mother was running away, very heavily pregnant, running across the border. 3 days she had to walk, and walking induced premature labor. It's only God's grace that the little baby has come out healthy and fine. We have not left human beings the chance to just be human beings. We did not leave these little girls a chance to be something other than what other word to use, but prostitutes. And now we're going to turn around and say, oh, look at this Rohingyas. Lastly, the point I will make, and stop with this point, is that, as I often say, that if everyone is a terrorist, no one is a terrorist. We really need to be careful with our labels, even if we are, say, from the side of policy making, from the side of governance, from the side of military. If we are just going to label everyone out there, we are even stopping ourselves from doing a good job.
That's right, Siddhartha. Siddharth writes with a lot of humanism. He writes with a lot of pain. He writes what he sees, and the story about those women in of the Rohingyas is indeed very touching and very sad when you actually picture that. I can picture it. I have seen such things. But you know, let's move a little bit into our own country. Since you talk only of battlefields, only of difficult places, let's go to Chhattisgarh. You mentioned in your book that the violence in Chhattisgarh has reduced, and yet there is this statement that you made that it was the most difficult place you were in. Isn't that a contradiction in terms? Why do you say that?
The violence in Chhattisgarh has most certainly gone down, and irrespective of what certain talking heads like to talk about, urban Naxal, that really isn't true in absolute numbers. The violence has been contained. I was just earlier, Chhattisgarh was difficult, primarily because of two reasons. One is that, there is a simplicity that comes in the battlefield, which is missing in regular city crime or whatever there is, A fighter makes for a good enemy, a clear enemy. So in Kashmir, we know who the enemy is, kind of, we don't. I mean, I'm making a broad statement here. Of course, there is nuance to that. But on a battlefield, the battle lines are very clearly drawn. So you know who's where. And there's a big difference between a violent man who is fighting for a cause or in a uniform versus that violent man who might just stop you. Nowadays, I've been reading a lot about Pune turning really quite nasty. They are unpredictable, they are deceitful, they are liars. Chhattisgarh was full of that. I like to believe that journalism in general, and mine specifically, deals in the trade of telling truths. And truth is very hard to come by in those forests of Bastar and all around. What has happened is that, because that conflict has been a low simmering conflict which has crossed half a century now, that lots of actors have found their little holes to stay in. And they have every interest in continuing the conflict. And as I mentioned in the middlemen of Maoist lands, millions of rupees are laundered, sent here, sent there. Everybody is making a little bit of a cut from that. They have no interest in ending the conflict. The conflict runs their houses. Now, when talking to people of this sort, it's particularly difficult because they do not want the reporting to go beyond a certain threshold of truth. They don't really want the whole truth to be presented. And Chhattisgarh particularly was very difficult for me to navigate because these deceitful people, let me just call them the plain word, liars. They are on all sides of the conflict.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Whether it is the guerrillas, whether it is the Indian state, whether it is the so-called human rights defenders, whether it is the builder lobby, which is trying to destroy the forests and so on and so forth. It really truly is full of liars, and including those in my profession. I will not take a name because it is rude to take names, but a certain veteran journalist, as I was just speaking to Mukund Padmanabhan, the former editor-in-chief of the Hindu, and he referenced this. He reminded me that you mentioned everybody, you did not mention journalists. I said, yes, I'm sorry, it was a mistaken omission. One of our colleagues, a very celebrated name, I was going into Bastar and I called him up because I had to do a story and several people just went back on their promises, and so I called him up and I said, dude, help me out with something, who should I talk to? And he says, he's an award-winning journalist who specializes in Central India. He said the first thing you do not do is try and get local journalists to help you. If you manage to figure your way out, do it, otherwise don't. I said I've done that before, but it's a little difficult. So Chhattisgarh has this elaborate web of lies, which makes life very difficult as a journalist or as a television show.
Yeah, thank you, Siddharth. It is a difficult conflict. It's in the heart of our country, and it's never ending. And as you said, there are so many people thriving on this never-ending story that, like all long-running conflicts, this too won't end. From there, let's go to another place, but you played a very different role here. I'm talking of Kashmir. I'm talking of a story that where you actually brought out what the terrorists were doing to the women in Kashmir. It's a story that brought you critical acclaim. It's also a story that brought you under the radar of certain terrorists who threatened to kill you and your family. And because of that, I remember 3 years ago, you told me that you were under the radar because people were watching you, and you also had a lot of police protection. But do tell us about how you uncovered the web of lies that the Pakistan terrorists are telling their people and telling the Kashmiris, and how they were exploiting the women of Kashmir. Because that's a very interesting side, a very interesting difference to what actually happened.
So it really started with a phone call from a very old source in Kashmir. He called me up one day and he says that, listen, I'm going to send you something on WhatsApp. Take a look at it. And he cut the call. A couple of minutes later, I get 2 messages on my WhatsApp. One is this selfie video of a young woman, young Kashmiri woman, face covered in chadar. And she, Hindi is not her first tongue. She's trying to say something, I cannot make everything out. And she's like, she's looking back and trying to really rapidly say something before somebody comes. That's very rushed and very paranoid. And she doesn't even say everything clearly. She just says that, "Mere saath galat hua, bahut galat hua, mere saath galat hua." She says that, And then she ends the video. And then there is the second message is that of a handwritten letter of which he's taken a photo and sent. So then I called the source up and I said that, okay, let's meet and talk about this. So it was somewhere near Nizamuddin. I met this source and we sat down and we started talking and I said, tell me a little bit more. He said, I'll tell you nothing more. I think you know what the story is about. So I said, yeah, I can gather, but I have a question that's really bothering me here. A, I'm not a Kashmiri. I have reported in Kashmiri Shah. I'm not a Kashmiri journalist. 2, I'm a man. If any of you know anything about Kashmiri society, you will understand that it is near impossible. In most societies, Kashmiri society more so, that a woman who has been assaulted will come up and speak with a man. That's not how it works. So I actually asked them that, why are you giving me this story? He said that because I cannot find a single Kashmiri journalist to take the story up and say it. And I said, okay, fine, tell me a little bit more. And he said, no, I will tell you nothing. You confirm that you will come, whether or not you will come to Kashmir, and I'll introduce you. We will only talk in person, you can speak. Honestly, I wasn't even sure if this was a plan. Sometimes agencies and governments and all power centers, they try to manipulate journalists into certain situations and plant fake stories and all of that. So I was very skeptical about it till I went and met that woman. And we started speaking. In fact, it was very difficult to talk to her because she first said she will speak, but then, I still remember sitting right in front of her, she started shivering. And she started swaying like this and saying, no, and she was uncertain that she wants to speak or not. But, I had a team where I had taken this woman with me. There were Kashmiri women there too and all. They consoled her, they calmed her down and said that listen, you must speak, he's come all the way, etc. You know the story of that one woman on that one rain-smeared morning turned into the story of about 24 women who I met over the next 5 days barely. Because somehow they trusted me after a point, because I did go in with this thing of like, oh, I'm here to question you or something. You really cannot, if you don't stop talking, you cannot listen. So I tried to follow that, and they somehow felt comfortable, and I found a whole bunch within a few days. And I said, okay, I'll do the story. But I also wanted to speak to the other side. We all know that some violations have happened from the Indian state side, etc. So I called up well-known, in my report I've named the Human Rights Watch in that. I called them up and I said that, do you know anything about this? They said, no. I said, how is it that you don't know anything about this? How is it that you don't know anything about this? You have millions and millions of dollars in grants and funding. And nobody ever told you about this? You couldn't form a fact-finding mission to go talk to these women? It does not negate the existence of the other side. But you did not report this. They got really upset. And me saying this, whatever, the entire charitable industrial complex, as I call them, they got really upset about this. But more so what happened is that it was a whole bunch of people in Pakistan and some in India too, who got rather upset with this report. Because, you see, the one thing that militants count on, is the sense of piety that they build. It's not very different from what we do in our propaganda for our forces also. But the entire platform of the jihadist movement is that they claim to be better than others. They are these soldiers of God. It's literally the word Lashkar-e-Taiba means the army of the pure. And here I went and did a story which spoke about you aren't really that pure. You've done what all powers everywhere do. That made them very upset. And it's a little funny now that I think of it. I got a threat mail from Tunisia. I did not even know anybody ever read my report from Tunisia.
Yeah, you said so.
Somebody who works for some militant organization, Tunisia, sent me a threat. But it wasn't all funny, it got a little serious, especially because this was the first time. Well, reporting in India is like, as they say, शादी में जाने के जैसा, कोई ना कोई नाराज हो ही जाता. So I'm accustomed to people getting upset, but this was rather poignant because they actually went through the trouble of looking up my addresses, sending me the coordinates, and telling me, we know this, here your mother lives here, yada yada, and we will hurt them as well. We'll make you really sorry for it. And I think for 3 years it was rather difficult. I couldn't even step out to get chai or something. Even when I was in Pune last time, you remember that? It was a very difficult time.
I remember that. I can relate to this. I was the commander of the army in a place called Shokin, and we had trapped a terrorist in a particular house. And we didn't know where he was. So one woman came out in a burqa and she insisted on speaking to me, and said, when she spoke to me, she says, burn that house, break it down. And in English, absolute English, she says, those are not good people inside. And one questioned her further, and she's read exactly what Siddharth is saying, that they'd come there 3 days ago, and they raped the mother, they raped the daughter, they raped the grandmother, and they were living there as guest terrorists, what they used to call themselves, a guest mujahideen. So these are stories that Siddharth has written that makes us sit up, question our morality, question the army of the pure, and question these men of violence, whether the violence is for for a particular region, whether it's a particular independence, or whether it's for a particular religion. And Siddharth also continues in a similar way, and he talks about He talks about Germany, he talks about Iraq, he talks about so many other countries. But I have far exceeded my time, Siddharth. We've gone past an hour.
I think that blame is entirely on me. I see that,
But it's been such an interesting conversation. May I request any questions from the audience? Thank you so much, Siddharth.
Firstly, Deshmukh, and I'm also a journalist, and it is really nice to meet a hardcore journalist after a very long time. And you know, you touched the areas where today, especially urban Indians, have become completely insensitive about. And like you say, the labeling. It's very difficult to have a social conversation. So, how did you have the guts to write this book? And you mentioned also that don't you have a need for security? And do you think that the times are changing since a few months?
It's such an honor to have Vinita ma'am of all people ask me this question. I know all about the risks she has taken.
Thank you.
Okay, let me not mention her stories without her permission, but nevertheless. Vinita ma'am, there are people like me who are stupid enough to come into this profession because they care to tell the truth. I wasn't always a journalist. I used to work for an investment bank. And little wonder that when I decided to become a journalist, everybody, very rightly, my extended family declared me mad and said, "Pagal ho gaya ye ladka." And pagal ho bhi gaya tha, obviously. But wasn't I scared to write the book? Yes, I was. I am still scared. But I couldn't live any better without having told these stories. I don't know of another way of living my life.
Thanks a lot. Any other questions?
Sorry, to answer your question about are things changing? Sadly, Vinita ma'am, no, they aren't. We are actually just using new descriptors, newer clothes on newer colors, newer names for old fetid ideas. The central of them being called what we call hate. The othering and hate for others. And the need to actually validate ourselves, not for ourselves, but by labeling others as being worse than you. And to speak about India, you know how it is that we did come together in the political sense of the word. India far exceeds the British and all of that. I'm aware of that much history. But the nation state, the political existence, the polity that we came together as against a common enemy called the British. Now that the memory of the British occupation is receding, it's almost gone away. We are a nation in search of an enemy. And we don't know who that best is going to be. Is it going to be Pakistan? Is it going to be the so-called anti-nationals? Is it going to be Muslims? Is it going to be who really? So no, I don't think times are changing. We'll find newer enemies to justify our excesses, newer people to hate. I mean, look at Pakistan. Look at Bangladesh. The Hindu population in Bangladesh has plummeted to single digits from 1971, right? When they liberated themselves from Pakistan. They never stopped hating after that. The Maldives has almost 100% Muslim population. There was almost nobody non-Muslim in that country. Yet that was the place which exported the largest number of ISIS recruits in all of the subcontinent. Just as we find people to love no matter where you are, if you have love in your heart, if you have hate in your heart, you will find people to hate. So no, I don't think times are changing in that sense. The only good thing I think that's happening, and this is a bit of a contradiction, I blame social media some time back, but I also appreciate the fact that it's actually led to a decentralization and democratization of voices, which also gives people like me a chance. Though I'm not on social media, I'm not an influencer, I have no influence on anybody, I hide behind my words still, but nevertheless there are people like me, there are people like you who are actually sitting for this. I think I've put everybody to sleep.
Yeah.
is there any solution to this? I mean, how it is going to end? What do you think? What is the solution? I mean, it will go on like that?
The answer, the reason to that is very simple. You see, infighting of human beings is the biggest hurdle to our progress as things stand today. The biggest nations in this world, they spend an inordinate, an ugly amount of money in defense, which should also be spent in making hospitals, it should be making schools, should be to teach children how to take up the arts and all of that. I'm not saying, I'm not denying, oh no, I'm sitting next to a general and saying that. But this general is a thinker and a writer himself, so he will agree. We don't need to do that. And I think we will at some point come to a tipping point where we realize that we're wasting our time fighting ourselves. Some of it is progressing, I do believe, that all the cyber rattling that has happened, that keeps on happening between India and Pakistan, we haven't actually gone into war in a very long time, an open war. America and China, every single day you will have this one saying something, but they haven't really gone into an open war as yet. So maybe there is hope. However, speaking of a solution, I think I'll first quote this thing from a book by Carl Sagan I had read. He spoke about this certain tribe in Africa who I don't remember the name off the top of my head. They have this very interesting thing they do. They have this night of celebrations, a day and night of drinking and celebrations. And when the men get really drunk and aggressive, etc., the women and children, what they do is that they hide away all the weapons that are there in there. And unabashedly I say this, that if this society has to be reigned in, women play a very, very big role. Not an indirect role, mind you. It is not an indirect role. Sit your men down and tell them not to be that aggressive. By all means. Say it directly, say it in as many words, and whenever you hear a word of hate, whether spoken on a bus or a train or whatever, don't just listen to it and ignore it. Call that out. Say that, come here, idhar. Why did you say this slur against this group? Why did you justify this extremism? I think that everyday pushback is what will lead to some semblance of solution.
It's happening in house conversations also. Not only in the bus, but even in home conversations. And that is the tragedy.
Yes, please respond to all the WhatsApp uncles who send you nonsense by saying, show me the source of this.
Yes.
Do it 4 times, right. The 5th time they will remove you from the group.
Can I just say something?
Please.
So, about 2 years back, a colonel, a retired army colonel, sent me a video which was obviously fake and hitting at a certain community. So I sent him a WhatsApp saying that, please tell me if it is factual, do not forward me fake videos. So to that he replied that okay, so in 6 months you are going to wear a burqa. So I recently reminded him that I am still not wearing a burqa. It's 2 years.
मैं अपने आप को बहुत सौभाग्यशाली समझती हूँ कि आपसे रूबरू करने का मौका मिला, आपको सुनने का मौका मिला। और मेरा प्रश्न ऐसा है कि जब आप बांग्लादेश या पाकिस्तान कहीं पर भी गए तो शायद भारत से अलग हुए उनको बहुत बरस नहीं हुए हैं, पर आपको ऐसा नहीं लगा कि उनके अंदर हमारे भारतीयों जैसा अंश है, ऐसा आपको लगा या नहीं लगा, या वो लोग बहुत बेरहमी से सबको मारते हैं, जैसा कि आपने एग्जाम्पल दिया कि बाबा उस लड़के को तुरंत उसको आपके सामने ही बंदूक से वो किया, तो ऐसा नहीं लगा कि उनके पास जो कुछ है ये सब इतना जो अंदर वो भर के बैठे हैं, तो वो कहाँ से आया, किस लिए आया, या वो हमसे किस तरीके से अलग हो गए, और आपको ऐसा नहीं लगा कि भारत उस मायने में बहुत सुरक्षित है?
ये कहूँगा कि जो एग्जाम्पल मैंने बांग्लादेश से दिया है, ऐसा नहीं कि वो भारत के हर कोने में हुआ नहीं है, हो नहीं रहा है। हम जब बांग्लादेश के माइनॉरिटीज़ के बारे में बात करते हैं, उनके बारे में हम चिंता व्यक्त करते हैं, हमें बहुत दुख हो रहा है इत्यादि इत्यादि, और जलगांव के पास ट्रेन में एक बुजुर्ग को बिना कारण हम पीटते हैं, तब हमारे माइनॉरिटीज़ के प्रति प्यार, उनके प्रति ये सब कहाँ, ये दोगलापन है पहली बात तो। और यहाँ पे हम अभी आपके दूसरे सवाल को मैं लास्ट में लेता हूँ कि उनमें भारतीयता है या नहीं। आपने ये कहा कि हम उनके तुलना में हम ज्यादा सुरक्षित है, हम बेहतर है। हम बेहतर इसलिए नहीं है कि हम हिंदू है या हमारा कोई आइडेंटिटी मतलब कोई आइडेंटिटी स्पेसिफिक है, कोई भाषा कोई स्पेसिफिक है, उसकी वजह से सुरक्षित नहीं है या बेहतर नहीं है। हम बेहतर सिर्फ और सिर्फ एक कारण से, वो है इस देश का संविधान। वो संविधान, वो इलेक्शन, वो सिविलियन अथॉरिटी ओवर मिलिट्री एस्टैब्लिशमेंट, वो जो एक सेक्शन है जिसे कहते हैं फंडामेंटल राइट्स, इन सब की वजह से हम बेहतर। हम में कोई अंदरूनी अच्छाई है ये मैं नहीं जानता हूं, या दूसरे में कोई ऐसे उनकी आत्मा में ही कुछ खराब है ऐसा मैं नहीं जानता हूं। इसका कोई प्रूफ मेरे सामने कभी नहीं है, कल नहीं आया था, आज तक नहीं आया। हम सिर्फ और सिर्फ हमारे राजनीतिक सामाजिक स्ट्रक्चर की वजह से, जो हमारे संविधानों में, हमारे कोर्ट्स में, हमारे पार्लियामेंट में है, हमारे इलेक्शन में है, इसकी वजह से हम बेहतर हैं। नाउ आपने पूछा कि क्या उनमें भारतीयता नहीं है। उनमें भारतीयता है उतना ही कि जितना हमें पाकिस्तानियत है, हमें भी श्रीलंकनत्व है, हमें भी बांग्लादेशत्व है। मैं अब जिस जुबान में आपसे बात कर रहा हूँ, वो जुबान तो इंडस वैली इंडस रिवर से लेके गंगा के बीच में ही अटकी हुई थी। इसमें किसी एक का हक तो है नहीं। हम इस जुबान को हिंदुस्तानी कहते हैं, यहाँ पे हिंदुस्तानी कहते हैं इसे। अगर मैं बांग्ला में बात करूं, मैंने थोड़ी देर पहले एक दो लाइन कहा था, फिर मैं बांग्लादेशी से कहाँ अलग हुआ। जब हम लोग पूना में बैठे हुए हैं ना, तो मुझे वो सुरमई फिश बहुत पसंद है, खास करके कड़ी पत्ता डाला हुआ। अगर जब मैं वो खाता हूँ तब तो मुझ में श्रीलंकनत्व भी आ गया ना। उनमें हम उतने ही बसे हैं जितना वो हम में बसे। कुछ गोरे रास्कल थे जो आए थे यहाँ पे, उन्होंने यहाँ वहां लाइन ड्रॉ कर दिया, और हम उनसे बड़े गधे हैं कि अभी भी उन लाइंस को हम डिफेंड किए जा रहे हैं।
The session was amazing and indeed so absorbing. On behalf of Prabha Khaitan Foundation, I, Sujata Sabnis, Ehsaas Woman of Pune, would like to express my gratitude to Siddharthya Roy and conversationalist Lieutenant General Shokin Chauhan. Thank you, sir. I would like to thank our patron, Shri Cement Limited, and media partner Lokmat, and a hospitality and venue partner O Hotel. Last but not the least, our audience. Thank you all for attending the event and making it successful and enjoyable. A mosaic of cultures forms the backbone of our nation, contributing to its vibrancy and richness. Prabha Khaitan Foundation promotes cross-state cultural understanding and appreciation. This is to support our ongoing efforts to foster unity and appreciation of the rich cultural heritage across India's diverse states. Highlighting the relevance of the same, today we are pleased to felicitate with the ethnic dupatta of Kantha Uttariyo. Kantha is a centuries-old tradition of stitching patchwork cloth from rags, which evolved from the thrift of rural women in the Bengali region of the subcontinent, today the eastern Indian states of West Bengal and Orissa and Bangladesh. It can be traced back 500 years as a way of Bengalis recycling old saris, dhotis and household textiles. By using the kantha technique, they upcycle their old textiles into quilts for warmth and comfort. I would now like to request Amita Munot, Ehsaas Woman of Pune, to felicitate the gentlemen for the evening.
Okay, thank you.
Just look at sir.
Amita ji, please felicitate Lieutenant General Shokin Chauhan.
Sure.